Hello, welcome back. This is Mr. Tipton, and today we are looking at parallel lines cut by a transversal. Let's start by drawing and talking about a pair of parallel lines. So right here, that was supposed to be straight. Close enough. You get the idea. They're lines, so they go on forever in both directions. They are parallel because these two lines are never going to meet, they're never going to intersect. They're going to go on forever. You know, I've drawn these vertically, but they're never going to cross. So they're parallel. That's what parallel means. This here, we'll call this line M. Line M, and this one will be line N. The symbol for parallel is, well, two parallel lines. So what I just wrote on the right side over here, that says that M is parallel to N. Now a transversal is any line that intersects parallel lines. So I'm going to call this one L. And on the side over here I'll write that transversal L intersects parallel lines M and N. Parallel lines M and N. Oh, got a few too many humps in my M there. M and N. Okay, a transversal is a line that intersects parallel lines. And in this figure, we've got parallel lines M and N and transversal L. Now, what we're talking about today are the angle relationships that are formed when you have a diagram like this. When you have a transversal, 8 different angles are formed when there are two parallel lines. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 angles there, and 5, 6, 7, another 4 angles are there. And all that we're talking about today are the relationships formed between these angles. Let's move on. Now, the first kind of relationship we want to talk about are corresponding angles. Corresponding just means that they are located in the same relative position. Now, I've gone ahead and redrawn the diagram on this screen. Pause if you need to, or just look at the diagram that you've already drawn. They should be the same or pretty close to it. Alright? So if I look, what angles are located in the same relative position? Well, we've got two groups of 4. So one example of corresponding angles would be angle 1 and angle 5. They're both angle 1 and angle 5. They're both, on the top left of their group of 4. The same relative position. That's what corresponding is. So what's another pair? All right, 2 and what? 2 and 6. They're both on the top right. Angle 2 and angle 6 are a pair of corresponding angles. What else do we have? Well, 3 and 7. Angle 3 and angle 7, and then we also have angle 4 and angle 8. These are 4 examples of corresponding angles that are created when we have parallel lines cut by a transversal. It's also very important for you to know that corresponding angles are congruent. That's going to be a big deal for future things. But if I told you that angle 1 was 100 degrees, then automatically you know that angle 5 is 100 degrees. Corresponding angles are congruent. If I told you that angle 3 was 80 degrees, then you also know that angle 7 is 80 degrees. All right? Moving on. Here we have alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles. I've got the same diagram drawn. Let's break down our vocabulary. alternate. Alternate means on the opposite side of the transversal. So our transversal, again, is our line that intersects the parallel lines. And if we're talking about being on the opposite sides of the transversal, well, the way this is drawn, that means one number from the top and one angle from the bottom. Interior means inside the parallel lines. Okay, inside the parallel lines is going to be inside this way. Alright, so there are two pairs of alternate interior angles here. Opposite sides of the transversal and inside the parallel lines. One of those pairs is angle 2 and angle 7. And the other pair, right here, angle 5, or angle 4 and angle 5. Angle 4 and angle 5. They are alternate interior angles. They're on opposite sides of the transversal and they're inside the parallel lines. It's also important to remember that alternate interior angles are congruent. If I told you that angle 4 was 110 degrees, then automatically you would know that angle 5 was 110 degrees. If I told you angle 2 was 70 degrees, that means angle 7 has to be 70 degrees. That's the rule for alternate interior angles. Our next angle relationship are alternate exterior angles. Alternate, we already know, that means opposite sides of the transversal, but this time we're dealing with exterior. That's going to mean outside the parallel lines, so this way from the parallel lines. Alternate exterior angles. Angle 1 and angle 8. They're on opposite sides of the transversal, but they're outside of the parallel lines. What's the other pair? Angle 3 and angle 6. Alternate exterior angles. And again, alternate exterior angles are congruent. If this is 70 degrees, then angle 6 is 70 degrees. If angle 1 is 110 degrees, then angle 8 is 110 degrees. Alternate exterior angles. Two more relationships. This time we have consecutive interior angles. We looked at alternate interior. Alternate meant opposite sides of the transversal, but here we have consecutive, and that's going to mean same side of the transversal. So an example of consecutive interior angles would be 4 and 7, because they're on the same side of the transversal. Interior still means inside the parallel lines. Angle 4 and angle 7. The other pair is angle 2 and angle 5. Now, these are not congruent. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Well, that wasn't straight at all. They are supplementary, which we know means that they have a sum of 180 degrees. So, if I told you that angle 2 was 80 degrees, and you know that 2 and 5 are supplementary, you know 5 has to be 100. If you knew that angle 4 was 100 degrees, then you know angle 7 would have to be 80 degrees. Those are consecutive interior angles. And our last pair are consecutive exterior angles. Consecutive, on the same side as of the transversal. Exterior is going to mean outside the parallel lines. Angle 1 and angle 6 are consecutive exterior angles. And our other pair is angle 3 and angle 8. Angle 3 and angle 8. And once again, these are supplementary, which means they equal 180 degrees. So if I told you that angle 3 was 70 degrees, then you know angle 8 has to be 110 so that they equal 180. If angle 1 is, oops, that won't work. If angle 1 is 110 degrees, then it means angle 6 is 70 degrees. All right, those are our angle relationships that are formed when a transversal intersects parallel lines. If you have any questions, write them down, and we'll talk about them in class. See you soon.